Speaking of boots on the ground, you can totally do that around the world, and it's a noble thing to do. You can also do that domestically some as well. My friends over at the Convo Couch are in South Florida right now because tonight Debbie Wasserman Schultz goes up against Jen Perlman. And, I only spend so much time on electoral politics on this show because, as you've indicated and as all of my guests have indicated, it can be incredibly frustrating, nor is it the only vehicle for change. It's far from it. And I think direct action is kind of the king of the hill anyway, as far as actually fixing this place. But I would love it if Debbie Wasserman Schultz lost tonight. Of course, I would love to see Jen Perlman replace her. And so my friends at the Convo Couch ran into Debbie Wasserman Schultz today. Check this out. They just posted this video. They were driving by. So there's Jen's people.
There she is. Debbie.
That's Pasta from the Convo Couch.
How you doing today? Great. What are you doing? Running for re-election. Don't we know? How do you think your chances are today? Oh, pretty good. Yeah. Excited. Hopeful. Nice. Well, good luck. Thank you very much.
Wow. What?
Does he sound like? Did Pasta sound like he was? Did he sound like he was kind of like grinding his teeth almost?
Yeah.
Like he was like, "Oh yeah, how are you? I know that we need to be really, really nice. So you're not going to approach our cars. So good luck."
Yeah. I think he played it as tactful as he could to get the soundbite. I think I would have the last couple seconds. I would have been like, "Long live the corporate wing of the party. You're doing Lord's work. Thanks for all that payday loan endorsement stuff. Awesome."
You brought up payday loans. Like, gee, I wonder why the Democrats went along with not supporting the community bank part of the postals. I wonder why. Maybe one of them has a financial interest in payday loans. And by one of them, I mean more than one. But there's a certain prominent one named Debbie Wasserman Schultz who hopefully loses tonight. I mean, it's a long haul, man, because she's a very powerful incumbent. And when it comes to election integrity, I mean, that area is, I would say, leading the pack as far as the worst of the worst. I mean, when you look at 2000, when you look at what they did to Tim Canova.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I mean, it is just, I mean, what they did to him the second time around, there's just no freaking way. I mean, he got like way less than he got the first time on his second run, and he got the same percentage in every demographic. And he hired a couple statisticians on his own, and they kind of like did an analysis, and they said, Tim, the likelihood of that happening in the election, and I might be like misappropriating this a little bit, like it might not be a direct, like exactly what they said, but it's in this league. They equated it to like, it would be like getting struck by lightning twice.
Wow.
Like it was in that realm. I forget if that was the exact thing, but it was something that like unlikely. It was at that level of like totally unlikely of that happen, where every single demographic, the exact same percentage votes for you.
Yeah, everybody's doing everybody dirty in these electoral elections. There's so much.
It's so brutal.
I think that's why there's been that. This is just my speculation. Is I think that the reason that the Democrats have never made a big deal about interstate cross-check, the software that's on a number of kind of like voting booths or election systems in a number of states, Republican states, Republican governors, Republican majority legislatures, where it bounces names off the roll that have similar sounding names. Those names more predominantly are for minorities, and minorities more predominantly vote for Democrats. So it helps the Republicans win elections. It helped Donald Trump win elections. According to the work of Greg Palast, it bounced a lot. Like we're talking 7.5 million people in total off rolls in different states, of which they don't even let them know this. But like, why the fuck are the Democrats not screaming about this? The only reason I could think they're not is that they've got their dirty tricks in some other way, and it'd be like mutually assured destruction.
Well, they do most of their dirty tricks during the primaries, and then Republicans do most of theirs during the general. And at the end of the day, it's a concentrated effort to make sure nobody that wants to disrupt the apple cart gets through. You stifle the progressives during the primaries, and then you stifle the corporate Democrat in the general to really make sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like, hey, I outwardly support Wall Street. I subtly support Wall Street. Okay, so we're going to try to screw over that subtle person in the general. But first, we're going to make sure they get to the general. Because before the general, there's somebody else who's like, I'm not for Wall Street. I actually want to be a public servant, and I want to be a public official, and I want to do policies that will actually help people. And they're like, well, we're going to try to make sure you don't get to the general. If by chance you do, we're really going to try to make sure we screw you over.
You're 100% right. That's exactly what it is. But it's like, I really see it now, I think in a weird way, clearer than I've seen it, where it's like, okay, the government has been completely taken over. The levers of power of the state have been completely taken over by the business class, by the ultra capitalists, by the corporations. So we have this corporate state, and the media landscape, the corporate media landscape, I'm going to say from Fox all the way through NPR, is a propagandistic corporate mouthpiece for the state. So it's like the whole thing is just this entity, this cabal. And if you could separate from that and just see it for what it is, it can at the very least keep you from getting revved up or spun around like a top every day by whatever story of the day they want to emotionally dysregulate you by, depending on which cultural echo chamber you subscribe to. You know, it's so true. So I, at least with this level of, I don't even call it cynicism. I think this level of clarity about it, it's like, at least I can look at these news channels from the perspective of, okay, what agenda are they pushing? Not that I'm ever gonna get any truth from them or news from them.
Well, yeah, I mean, because all the corporate media, like, they all subscribe to the same formula. They really are. I mean, so many people, they make it out like Fox News is the only culprit, and Fox News is terrible, abso-freaking-lutely. And but MSNBC follows the same playbook. CNN follows the same playbook. You know, I mean, all the right-wing commentators were number one when Obama was president, because the people that didn't like Obama, they really needed their anti-Obama catnip. Now Rachel Maddow's number one because people need their anti-Trump catnip. And that's all she does. That's all she does. She doesn't offer an actual analysis of the problem. No one at MSNBC does. They're not going to tell you about what's going on in Flint. They're not going to tell you about DAPL. They're not going to tell you about what's really going on with healthcare, because when the commercial time comes, who are all their advertisers? Big pharma, big oil. You think they're trying to get the word out? No, they're buying favorable coverage. Yeah. They're buying favorable coverage. Oh, and guess what? You're not going to hear an honest story about net neutrality because they're owned by Comcast.
Very true. All true. And, you know, even NPR, we'll go, well, NPR, you know, it's National Public Radio. When I was in DC, I went to this little, little house party, a little get together, dinner party sort of thing. And I'm hanging out with two friends, and literally right before we walk in, because it was like a friend of a friend, I'm like, oh, whose house is this? She's like, oh yeah, it's a bunch of people that work at NPR. And I was like working at RT America at the time. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So I was like, how much can I tell them about what I do without telling them where I work, because their hair is going to go on fire. But so I was just telling them I'm a comedian. I work for Redacted Tonight, political satire show, anti-corporate, anti-war, outside the two-party system. They're like, oh, interesting. Blah, blah. And then and they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, it's on YouTube. Deal with it. But so then.
Did you do that? Did you
no,
do
I
that?
didn't. No, I didn't do that.
You should have. Why didn't you close with that?
I don't know.
And then give him a card. Be like, Jonathan O'Donnell, I'm on the TV.
Yeah, I'm on the TV. Yeah, nice to meet you. So then I'm talking to one of them who's in their advertising department or in their sponsorship department, and she just told me, she's like, yeah, you know, it's the same thing like any other, you know, news outlet. She's like, we call it sponsorship. We're never supposed to call it advertising, but it's the same thing. They just pay us an advertiser. And I was like, all right, good to know.
Yeah, well, and did she say who those advertisers are? Because that's the bigger thing. I mean, it'd be one thing if they just got, you know, because I know in non-commercial radio, it's called, what's it called? It's called like mentions. Instead of like advertisements, it's called mentions. And there's certain things that you can't. I mean, it's kind of goofy the way they do it. And I know this because I did non-commercial radio in college at a community radio station. I loved it. It was amazing. It, I guess prepared me for what I'd go on to do. But, you can't have like a direct call to action. Like you can't be like, check out the tacos at Taco Tim's because they're great. You can't do that. But what you can say is Taco Tim's makes tacos from all natural ingredients sourced from, whatever. You can't say they're great tacos or good tacos, or, you can just say they're tacos and this is how they're made. And then you can say to learn more. You can't say go to their website. You can't do that. But you can say to learn more, go to, Tim. But again, this isn't some non-commercial community radio station that is just getting, mentions from a local restaurant run by a dude in the community who's just selling tacos. They get Coke money from the Koch brothers. They get these big corporate interests that are sponsoring them. So NPR is doing the same thing that all these other corporate entities are doing, and there's nothing public about that at all.
Absolutely. And even if they're not doing the ad reads per se, they're still getting that money. So they're not going to be doing hypercritical coverage of those outlets. It just doesn't work that way. It's the same thing where it's like, do Americans realize that the Washington Post is owned by Jeff fucking Bezos? Do we not, like, how the fuck do people know that and then still be like, well, I'll just read the Washington Post? It's crazy. And then realize like, oh, Amazon does all of the, Amazon's web services does all of the cloud computing for the CIA and other intelligence agencies. Like we're talking years ago, 4 years ago or something like that, it was 600 billion for just the CIA. Now I believe it's well over $1 trillion, and it's like multiple intelligence agencies, if not all of them. It's so fucking obvious. You know what I mean? It's like you got that. You got former heads of the NSA and CIA as analysts, on-air analysts on CNN. You know what I mean?
They're proud of it. They're proud of it. They advertise that. They're like, yeah, here's former intelligence. Here's former CIA people. They're telling the news now. They're coming. We want to hear what they have to say.
But then if I'm like, yeah, I think these corporate media outlets are compromised by the deep state. It's like, dude, you
crazy.
are out to lunch.
Crazy. It's all that state media we need to worry about. And when we say state media and when we say bureaus, we just mean Russia and China. We don't mean England. We don't mean Canada. We don't mean Scotland. We don't mean Japan even. It's just Russia and China. And by the way, America has bureaus in other countries. That's how news and information works. And that's all fine too. That's all fine too. But, when it comes to RT America, Sputnik America, Xinhai, it's just the Russia and Chinese outlets. Those are the only ones we use the FARA Act on, which, by the way, that act originated to combat Nazis. That's what it exists for. And we're using it against American bureaus run by American citizens, only if the outlet is Russian, or Chinese.
Well, you know that.
Wonder why.
Yeah, because Americans' foreign policy, I don't know if you know this or not, but the war on terror just sort of stopped. It just sort of ended because nobody started talking about it anymore. We pivoted away. The war on terror just that's like so fucking, I don't know, 2016 or whatever. But
we moved on to new branding. We're still doing it, but we still got 9 countries in the bank.
Yeah, but it's like now, no, the foreign policy strategy of America is containment of Russia and China. So in order to maintain certain aspects of that containment, you have to have a good amount of Americans fucking hating Russia and China, at least to an extent, where it's like any sanctions they want to slap on those countries, they're like, okay, yeah, we're fine with that. We understand that, which is why right now the conservative corporate media echo chamber through places like Fox is just every day flogging China. It's like, China did this virus to us, the Chinese flu, the Kung flu. I mean, that one's racist, but at least it's a little bit funny. But and
did they actually say that?
They call it the Kung flu. Trump calls it.
Wow, really? Yeah. I've actually never heard that. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Such villainous shit, but it's like whatever. So you got that. So now it's like a segment of the population that listens to that corporate echo chamber fucking hates China And there's real effects of that. Chinese American, Asian Americans are being assaulted, having property, like graffitied, all sorts of fucking crazy shit. The idea of like Asian people feeling comfortable as tourists coming to America, all that stuff, going to university.
Sure.
So the ripple effect of this is a lot. But also, then you got the corporate liberal echo chamber. Those people have like a Russiagate worm in their brain that can be activated at any time. Like they fucking hate Russia reflexively with no critical analysis. It's like, for the love of fucking Christ, just look at 5 videos that Aaron Mate did about Russiagate, and you can like separate from it. Just come on, you got like they got flogged and lied to for
Aaron Mate, Glenn Greenwald, Noam Chomsky. I mean anyone that took the time to just, it's like there was this big rug just thrown out, and then a tree was put in front of the rug, and then there was this big ass forest, and people were just staring at the tree. And journalists like Aaron and when it, and Glenn, and when it came to that issue, they just fucking moved over from the tree, lifted up the rug, saw the freaking forest, and was like, "Hey guys, what about?" And they're like, "Ah!"
Yeah, dude. And I will tell you something that I will always appreciate, because working at Artsy American during that time, it was incredible. It was already a stressful job, pushing out these stories and stuff. But on top of that, just the pressure of Russiagate looming and being flogged constantly. The fact that that you guys at the Jimmy Dore show were constantly calling out, that always meant so much to me, because it was like, oh, this is like a voice of reason, a voice of sanity that is amplified. I know there's a lot of people that are connecting with that show, and it was just nice to hear, because there were things that I agreed with, but I couldn't say, because it would just be like, you're just fucking holding water.
Oh yeah. You needed an outsider to say it. You needed,
that was awesome.
Well, so let's get to and John, look at the bright side of all this. Someday Bezos is going to be emperor, and when that happens, like somehow this show is going to be found. I don't know what the internet's going to look like at that point, but there'll be someone with like a super high tech VPN. They're going to find this show, and they're going to be like, those two assholes. They said there was a problem with all this shit. I wonder if they have specials out or something. I'm going to see if I have enough Bezos bucks to buy it.
Yeah, maybe they'll.
They were like, he owns a newspaper. He has deals with the CIA. He's on his way to become the first trillionaire. There's some weird stuff floating around all here. It's weird when you just let a corporation take over your country. This is maybe a bad thing. I think there's a word in the dictionary for it. I think it's actually called fascism. I think that's the frickin' dictionary definition of what fascism is. But these two assholes, they saw a problem here.
Yeah, maybe some Bezo bucks. Maybe you can throw some Bezo bucks towards my subscribers' Substack account. But
there you go, buddy.
But what I want, which I haven't set up yet, working on it. But what I wanted to say is that what it actually is. What our government actually is an inverted totalitarian state. Sheldon Wallen laid this out. Great political scientist, passed away a few years ago. Someone who Chris Hedges looked up to, someone who Chris Hedges said is the best political scientist of, I believe he said, of the 21st century, or contemporary. So maybe it's this early part of the 21st century when he was alive. And he was a professor at Princeton and at Berkeley, and he laid out his theory or his explanation of the American government being an inverted totalitarian system, not a traditional totalitarian system where concentrated state power has control over every aspect of American life in a repressive way. Instead, because the corporate state has taken over, the corporate powers have taken over the state, and they're the ones who are extracting so much wealth from us and keeping us under thumb and keeping us uninformed and each other's throats. It's an inverted type of totalitarianism. And he said the only way that can work is if there is the mouthpiece for it, which is the corporate news outlets. And what they can do is turn the American people against each other, and can also keep their political IQs low, so they keep shooting themselves in the foot, kind of going against their own self-interests. And things like that. And basically, he said any kind of attempt at revolution, he was saying relative to how powerful the American military is, National Guard, how militarized the police are, and things, in his opinion, not being repressed enough to try to undertake a full-fledged violent revolution. He said that literally at this point in time, in the beginnings of this revolution, just telling people the truth about stuff is a revolutionary act. And I completely agree with that.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make